Exodus 21 talks about rules and commandments for the treatment of slaves. So a lot of people think that God condones slavery, that he supports it, but let's take a deeper look. Back then, slavery occurred in a few different ways. It wasn't always forced. A person sometimes would choose to become a slave if they were too poor to repay a debt. This would ensure that they would be taken care of, as well as them working towards paying off a debt. Sometimes a poor family would sell a child into slavery if they could not take care of their needs. In modern times, we think of slavery as being intense and horrible torture and punishment and oppression. But to the Israelites, this is not how it was. This is not how they were instructed to treat their slaves. And God knew that slavery came about by different circumstances, and so he outlined guidelines for people to treat their slaves correctly. In modern times, we have government social programs that will financially support people if they need. Then there wasn't such a thing, so people opted to become servants. However, this wasn't always the case with other cultures. Slaves often came about through kidnapping. God did allow the Israelite to take servants from people that he conquered, and this was a measure of kindness, as he would allow them to live with the Israelites and serve them, not slave in the way that we think of it as endless hours of grueling work. These people were treated nicely, and they were exposed to the word of God, and many of them saved. In these times, slavery was not based on race. It was based on circumstance. God made these laws and allowances to care for people. Deuteronomy 23 talks about how if a slave runs away, he is freed. These laws were there to help people, not to keep them in servitude. Hebrews 15:12 talks about if a Hebrew man or Hebrew woman is in slavery, on the 7th year they are to be freed as a servant. The laws outlined in Exodus speak against abusing slaves and says they are to be freed if they are seriously hurt, and the person doing the abusing is to be seriously punished. In Exodus and throughout the Bible, the rod is talked about as a form of discipline. That's shebet in Hebrew. And this is not spoken about strictly for slaves, but also refers to discipline with the rod to men and to children alike as a form of correction, not of abuse. In Exodus 21:21, a slave is called the property, but the property is the same word that's used for money or silver. The Hebrew word is kesef, and it makes sense to understand this as meaning the slave was not the literal property, but his work was the property of the owner, the work that he did. Slavery was never part of God's plan. He just made laws so people would be treated fairly.